I started owning hamsters when I was 9 or 10 years old. The exact age is a little bit blurry in my mind, but since then I have always had a hamster in my home. I don't think there was a time period where I didn't have a hamster. And I am now currently 26 years old. So that would mean I've had hamsters for approximately 16 years. And that's insane for me to think about. I had gotten into hamsters because my babysitter at the time, her mom brought home this hamster because it was previously in a group home and it wasn't doing so well with the people and how it was being handled, so they decided to bring it home. And that was my first time even knowing what a hamster was, because before that, I had no clue what the heck a hamster was or that they even existed, honestly. He was a cream and white long-haired Syrian hamster, and he was the sweetest thing ever, and that is what encouraged me to want to get my own hamster. And since then, I have been through so many stages of hamster care, and actually, majority of it has been documented here on YouTube.
So it's me, Chocolate Cottage 26, and I'm going to be giving you some hamster cage tours. There he is. He's so cute. Look at him. I love him. His ears are so cute there. Hey guys, it's me, Chocolate Cottage 26, and today's video is going to be how to make a homemade hamster playpen. Okay, so this is Wasabi compared to the Jang playpen. So I'm going to start off with Pop-Tart's cage. There's little Basil. I want to give him some treats, so... Hey guys, it's me, and today's video is going to be why small cages are bad. I was planning to change my hamster's cage into a German-styled hamster cage, which is something that just has all natural things. There's a lot of bedding, sand. Hey guys, it is me, and so today's video is finally Honey's cage tour.
Say hello, YouTubes.
Unfortunately, Waddles cannot free roam in the same way that the Syrians get to. This is because of how fast and how speedy he is. From small wire cages to connectable cages to bin cages to homemade cages to aquariums and to even IKEA hacks. I feel like I have probably been through every sort of hamster enclosure imaginable. Throughout these 16 years of having hamsters, I have gone through so many different opinion changes. When I first had hamsters, my enclosures sucked. They were super small and not suitable at all. And when I joined the hamster hideout forum, which unfortunately no longer exists, I had learned that the minimum at that time was 360 square inches of floor space. Some of you might recognize that number. So of course I worked towards getting my hamster enclosures to that number, and then I can't remember how exactly long after that it was. It might have been a couple of years, but the forum had finally decided it was time to up their cage minimums, and that is when 450 square inches of floor space became a thing. Now let me tell you, there was a lot of mixed opinions when this happened. I remember there being a lot of angry people because they were perfectly fine with 360 square inches of floor space, or their hamsters seemed fine. Or there were people that had just purchased enclosures that met that minimum and they were feeling frustrated because then they were going to have to go out and get a different enclosure after they had just went ahead and purchased one. Whereas there were some people that were really, really happy and they were excited because it was about time that the minimum had been upped. And then I even remember when the forum decided to completely get rid of cage minimums, and you were only really allowed to recommend someone to upgrade their enclosure if they were asking for cage advice or if their hamster was showing signs of stress. And this was really controversial because I personally think it is important to have some sort of minimum because you need some sort of baseline when it comes to having pets. The older I've gotten, the more that I realize that not everything is black and white, and there's actually a lot of gray areas, and for every rule there are going to be exceptions. And when I look back at my hamster care videos when I was younger, I can see how in my head everything was very black and white when it came to hamster care. It was very much like, well, this is the cage size that you need to meet, and if you don't meet that, that's not good enough. Or like, you need to have this, and you know, it was very black and white, and there was no thinking about other situations or some of the exceptions to these rules. Now, I have a lot of examples that I have recently been thinking more deeply about that I just have never thought about these things in the past. The first example I have is a comment that I recently had received from somebody who lives in Germany, and the gist of their comment was that my paper bedding for my hamsters is unsuitable, and that wood shavings is the superior bedding because it's more natural for the hamsters, and that no hamster keeper recommends paper bedding, and that I was a horrible person because I wasn't able to change it. Wood shavings is also not a natural bedding that hamsters would live on, and neither is paper bedding. The second thing is that in Germany, I know that wood shavings and spruce shavings in particular is a very, very commonly used hamster bedding, and it's great. It looks really soft and holds tunnels great, but I don't have that available to me. The only wood shavings that I personally have available are really, really, really shit aspen wood shavings that are super chunky and dusty, and they just don't hold tunnels the same way that my paper bedding does. And my hamsters can burrow just fine in my paper bedding once it's compressed, and I have a lot of videos and pictures of my hamsters creating burrows in there. And throughout this back and forth, one of their solutions was that, well, if I don't have wood shavings and I can't get them, then I should just not have hamsters at all. And when you think about that, that would mean almost all of North America not having hamsters because paper bedding is more prevalent to us. And that really just got me thinking, because we are so consumed in ourselves and what we have available to us that we often don't think about other countries that have different things available to them. And there might be alternatives that work better for them because they don't have exactly what we have. And this kind of leads me into my next example, and that is there are a lot of countries that just have like zero animal welfare laws, and that a lot of the people there are poor and they are not able to spend hundreds of dollars ordering like sprays or things, or even trying to figure out a website that would ship to them. I recently was messaged about someone in Serbia who had found 2 Syrian hamsters. I think they were dumped, and they were trying to ask if I knew of any places that sold like proper hamster supplies in Serbia. So I was trying to do my own research for them, and do you think I could find a single website that would ship to Serbia? No. And it is really, really easy to say, well, you just don't own a hamster then if you can't provide that. But thinking about how this person found 2 dumped Syrian hamsters, what are they supposed to do? These are dumped pets. What I'm not sure exactly what the solution a lot of people are looking for, because if it just isn't available or it's extremely hard to obtain, what are they supposed to do? They can obviously try their best and make the best out of the situation, but they might have to make exceptions to a lot of the rules. Another thing that I have learned over the 16 years of having hamsters is that everybody has an opinion There are people who absolutely love my hamster enclosures, and there are people who absolutely hate my hamster enclosures and say that they're not enough and they don't meet the standards. One of the things that really stuck to me was seeing one of, in my opinion, the best hamster influencer who has the most amazing cages, in my opinion, get a comment saying how someone didn't think their hamster's enclosure was cluttered enough. And that was just really shocking to me because their hamster enclosures are filled. But these days I see a lot of comments on people who already are aware of proper hamster care. They're providing a large hamster enclosure. They're aware of the bedding depth hamster needs, foraging and sprays and things like that. And there are people who are trying to almost just like nitpick things and create issues, which is, it's very odd to me because there are so many people out there that still do not realize what proper hamster care looks like. They don't know that hamsters need a lot of bedding. They don't know how large of an enclosure a hamster needs. Those are the type of people who need help with their care, not necessarily wasting energy on somebody who is already aware of minimums and substrates and sprays and all of that stuff. And that is why it feels like hamster care these days has become more of a competition than actually caring and helping the hamsters. I remember when my hamster Mabel, she was coming to the end of her life and she had cancer. And I got a comment about not having enough sprays in her enclosure. And I think it's funny to me because I have provided her with sprays her entire life. But at that point in her life, sprays really wasn't the concern. It was like her happiness and her passing comfortably and dealing with having cancer. And Mabel wasn't suffering because she didn't have enough sprays at that time. So I don't feel like it was necessarily thinking of like what was the best for Mabel at the time. It was more so, what can I nitpick? With all of these opinions, I have seen a lot more minimums kind of just pulled out of thin air, and there's nothing really to back the reasoning of the minimum. For example, the amount of substrates that you have in your hamster's enclosure, or the amount of types of sprays that you have in your hamster's enclosure. I have seen people say that if you don't have 7 types of sprays, you don't have proper hamster care. And I really hope that we can all come to an agreement that that is really silly. For one, I don't even think that hamsters in the wild would have naturally 7 different types of sprays all available to them. For example, the Syrian hamster, who would typically be found in farmers' fields, a lot of the times farmers these days only do 1 crop at a time, so they wouldn't necessarily have the same variety of sprays. So it doesn't even make a lot of sense. And I also don't think that somebody who only has 2 different substrates in their enclosure, I don't think that should be considered improper care. And I really think this energy could be better off spent helping people who have really small enclosures, or even petitioning pet stores from selling improper supplies or too small of cages, than harassing someone who is already pretty aware of hamster care and enrichment and stuff like that. Studies have also become a really big thing within the whole world. I know that whenever somebody states something, the response is always, well, do you have a study that backs that? And while studies are really important and good and helpful, we can't always just rely on studies. When it comes to hamsters, we don't have a ton of studies on them because they just aren't popular like dogs and cats are. Another thing with a lot of these studies that we do have, they are being done for laboratories and ways to help hamsters in laboratories welfare, not necessarily pet welfare, if that makes sense, I hope. Not all studies are high quality. Sometimes the sample size could be small, or the way that they've conducted the study might not be the best way. And there also sometimes is the bias behind the study, who is paying for this study to be done, because there are companies that pay for studies to be done for a specific outcome. Conflicting studies also exist, and this is a big thing because I know a lot of people who will just grab a study and say, well, here's the study on it. But there are also studies that can show the opposite of what you are trying to say. And oftentimes this is cherry picking. But that is why a study doesn't necessarily equal I'm right. So while studies are important and they can help us evolve and improve our pet care, they aren't always the end-all be-all. And the last thing that I have learned from having hamsters for 16 years is definitely my perception of death. This is something that I get a lot of questions about, and I'm often asked, how do you continue to own hamsters when their lifespans are so short? Isn't it super heartbreaking? And I can definitely say that it doesn't get easier. Hamster lifespans are never going to change. They're always going to be relatively short because they are rodents, and unless there is some magical elixir that can be given to hamsters to extend their lifespan, it's probably always going to be like that. And it's sort of just something that you have to come to terms with, that you just have to accept, like, that's the inevitable. Like, death is all around us, and if I let it affect me to the point where I just don't want to have hamsters anymore, that's fine. I know a lot of people can't handle the heartbreak so often, but for me, when I think about hamster care and the fact that a lot of hamsters end up in small cages with no enrichment and they can't perform their natural behaviors, I think about, how can I help the next hamster? I've come to terms with, this is the hamster's lifespan, and once they have passed, I can cherish all of the memories that I have, and I can be happy with myself that I was able to at least provide them with an environment where they were able to perform their natural behaviors, and they didn't have to suffer showing zoochosis signs and bar chewing 24/7. They were actually able to hopefully have an enjoyable life. And if I am able to then adopt another hamster and provide that for another hamster, that is what makes me happy. And that's kind of how I have just come to accept their short lifespans. So those are all of my thoughts. Hopefully I didn't bore anybody, and hopefully this video isn't too crazy long. I have all of these thoughts that I just love. I want to share them. So hopefully it was enjoyable, and I hope to see you in our next video.